decided we want to start making games. So I have no AAA experience whatsoever, but I'm going to be moderating the panel, and I'll hand it out to you.
Okay, thanks. I'm Ben. I'm with Trinket Studios. We're in Chicago. We're working on Battleship Brigade. We're an independent developer. We're in one of the booth aisles over there in the convention hall. Battleship Brigade's an action cooking RPG. And all of my colleagues, we formerly worked at kind of close to a AAA, but probably more like a AA studio in Chicago. It was a Disney studio, so I have a little bit of experience with both.
I'm Randy Nash. I'm a technical designer at Volition. Been doing this for probably about 10 years or so. I come from North Carolina. I worked for Red Storm and Ubisoft on a lot of the Ghost Recon titles that came out in the past 6 years. And at Volition.
I'm Eric Arnold, also from Volition, a programmer. I've been there for just over 13 years now. Worked on all the Red Dragon titles, a couple of the Saints Row titles, Punisher, doing lots of physics and destruction things.
Cool.
That was it.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Physics and destruction.
And on to Heather.
I'm Heather Decker. I'm the chair of IGDA Chicago, which we put on game development events in Chicago. I'm also the lead technical artist at Zynga in Chicago. Prior to that, we were a startup called Spooky Cool Labs. We were acquired by Zynga. And prior to that, I was freelance, Indy, worked on a couple of really small iPhone games, things like that. Now I work on a game called Hit It Rich, which is social casino slots that my mother loves.
It's like the mark of true success when your family finally is like, okay, this is good.
Yes.
Yeah,
when your mom finally accepts you.
Yeah. My mom got an Amazon Fire and downloaded one of the games that I made, and I was like, my mom is playing Cosmic Kitty Pop. What is wrong with the world?
I'm Dave Bashiro. I'm from Double Bomb Interactive. I'm 50% of that dev studio. So we're not really much of a studio. It's more of an apartment and a house that we're split across. And we've been at it for about 5 months, making our first commercial game, All Things Go Boom, also physics and destruction. And yeah, and prior to that, I worked for the federal government producing serious games for trading purposes. Not so fun to play, but kind of cool to make.
Yeah. So you all kind of briefly touched on it, but I'd like to start at the end. Like, what is your background in, and how did you really get started? Like, how do you feel like was your first step into the games industry?
For me, I started as a print designer actually, and then I got bored with that, and I went into game development. It's at the same job. It was just in the government. There's a lot of downtime, so I just started playing with other things. I got into Flash development. That died, whatever. And then I became a web developer after 6 years, and then I started getting the itch to make a game for some reason back in January, and I had 2 weeks off, and that's where we're at now, and that's how I kind of dove back into it.
I was in graphic design initially, and then I was working in Flash as well. I still work in Flash actually. It's not dead, by the way.
Oh, it's dead in the web
It's
world.
dead to you.
Yeah.
On
it's
web.
dead to me.
Yes, yes. Oh yeah, web. Yes.
Yeah.
I did some web stuff too. I was teaching some stuff with textbooks, and yeah, I started doing stuff for myself because you can do that. Like if you like games, you could explore how to do them yourself. It's cool.
Totally.
I would say I got started in early elementary school. My friend and I would get together and we'd draw out levels of games that we wanted to make, and we were going to totally send them off to Nintendo or somebody and like, you should make my game because it's obviously awesome.
Yeah.
And then went to a Saturday morning community college thing on teach how to program and did like a prints out 1 to 10. It's like, that's amazing. So then from that point I just bought books and taught myself how to program. Found this thing called Click and Play, which is like the earliest game engine that you could just kind of drag and drop and stick pieces together and make games. So through middle school, high school, I did that. In college, I just continue making my own stuff. And somebody randomly found my student webpage, another student. He said, hey, it looks like you like to make games. Do you want to make a club? So we made a student group to make games. And then that group ended up helping to start a game design specialization at Michigan State that has grown into, I think, a full minor now. So started doing that stuff, and then through that and all demos and stuff I made. I got internship at Volition between my junior and senior years, and then got hired out of there.
So I grew up learning Rex, which probably nobody here has heard of. It's kind of the predecessor to Lua or Python, if you're familiar with those. It's just a basic scripting language, so I started making text adventure games when I was little, and that kind of grew into teaching myself a little bit of C++ and DirectX, and discovered that I really didn't like to program for 40 hours. Well, he doesn't program anymore.
I just tell him what to do.
Yeah. So I discovered I didn't really like to program 40 hours a day, but I had a mind for it. And it wasn't until I got hired in tech support and eventually QA at Redstorm, I learned a lot about design and the fact that it's more than just sitting there and writing down ideas on paper. There's scripting, there's level design, there's mission design, there's combat design, there's all these subspecialties to design, but a lot of them involved different aspects of, oh, well, you have to be a little bit technical, and you have to be a little creative, and you have to be able to communicate, and like, yes, that's exactly what I want to do. And I just started talking to the design manager at Redstorm, who went back and forth for about a year, and he was giving me books, and they knew I had an interest, and eventually it led to an opportunity to get hired on as a scripter at Redstorm. And then that just progressed to where I am now as a technical designer.
Yeah, echoing a lot of the same sentiment about like growing up playing games, loving them. Like I knew that I wanted to work in game development from a very early age. I didn't really have a strong idea of what that meant, but you know, I got into high school and I took some computer programming classes, and that seemed like it was the path forward, and I really enjoyed doing that. But it still wasn't like a fully formed sense of what that meant. But I went into college actually for a major in game development at DePaul in Chicago. And that was definitely like a solidifying experience, because I understood more about what aspects of game development I wanted to get into, and it was programming. I really like, you know, structuring and organizing things and facilitating tools for people on the team. So I went through the program there. There was a professor who was working at Wildload at the time who I had his class, and by that way I managed to get an internship at Wildload, and then I got hired, and yeah, it was a pretty direct route straight into game development.
That's awesome. Yeah, I started out like making websites when I was 12 and was just tinkering around in front-end HTML and CSS, and wound up going to college for interactive media, which wound up turning into an animation degree somehow. But right out of college, I got a job at a startup doing web stuff, and then decided I hated that and decided to start my own startup. Not really a startup, but just a little studio with some friends. And that was 5 years ago. And after about a year in, we decided, why do we want to keep doing web stuff? Why don't we make video games? We all love video games. And so that was just when we were like, okay, let's just start making video games. Like, no experience among any of us. We had like a college club that we made like Game Boy emulator, you know, bad clones of like Burger Time. But beyond that, it was just kind of we want to do this, so we're going to start doing this, and that was 4 or 5 years ago. So, so I want to get on the topic of indie versus corporate. I'd like to kind of address how many people are in the studio that you're in currently, and what is an average day like? So for us, we have 5 people. And we are actually probably about 75% client work, just so that we can keep the doors open, and 25% game projects, which is what you see on the show floor here. For us, we have Smugglecraft on the show floor. So most of our time is spent working on games for clients, things like that. And so we'll do morning meetings, and then just get to work and spend whatever time we can on clients, and then spend whatever time we can on games. So how is it kind of like broken down in your guys' studios?
Well, we're only 3 people, and we have very different sleep schedules. There's 2 programmers. I'm one of them. The president is the other, and then our artist tends to prefer to come in around like 3 in the afternoon and like work until like 3 in the morning or something like that. So there's not a whole lot of like, all right, let's all sync up and talk about what the plan is. It's a bit more distributed.
So everybody's working remotely?
No, we all sync up a little bit, like for a few hours. We have a cooperative space that we rent desks at, so that does help. That's important. But yeah, we just started doing some client work. I would say that maybe 10%, 20% of the time we do client work, and then the rest we're focusing all on Battle Chef. But yeah, so we're very distributed. We use Trello to like try to keep track of what everybody's supposed to be doing. and Skype each other in Slack. So
Slack helps a lot.
yes.
So we're about 200-ish people, and the day-to-day really depends on what we do. As a technical designer, a lot of my time is spent running to people's desks, helping them figure out how to do something, helping them figure out a scripting issue, how not to do something.
The problem solver. Sorry, that was my phone.
Just general problem solving a lot of the times. If I can manage to get time away from that, a lot of the time is spent either in meetings talking about architecture for content and for the game to make sure we are building things in a way that isn't going to break 6 months from ship or 2 weeks from ship, and making sure everybody knows this information and actually can apply it and understand it, and not just run completely lone wolf and just start doing things the way they want to do it because, well, that's just what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, so my role is studio architect. It means I have 6 different groups: AI, animation, physics, rendering, UI, what we call connected, which is the back-end server communication stuff. So most of my day is spent either in meetings talking about how things should be put together. We do a lot of code reviews to make sure what they've made by itself is good, and then how it connects with everything else is good. Just random people stopping by my desk saying, I'm having this problem, how should I do this? And with my background in physics, we only have one guy who's dedicated to physics. So I often field a lot of physics questions in addition, since I know how stuff works. So like, okay, we want to do this, what's the proper way to do that in physics? So I don't actually program very much anymore. It's just a lot of random helping people throughout the day and making sure they're doing it right.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, I get some of that too. Overall, our studio, okay, so Zynga as a whole is like a lot more people, like probably 1,500-ish. I don't know, I haven't looked at a thing lately on it. But we have people, like mostly our studio's in Chicago. There's probably about 50 or 60 people in Chicago. And then we have people in San Francisco, we have a couple people in Michigan, we have people in Canada, we have people all over the place, but most of us are in Chicago. So I spend a lot of time on Skype and in Jira and using email and communicating with people remotely, as well as a lot of time myself in different meetings throughout the day, like figuring out how we're going to do stuff. Sounds familiar. Mostly I work with the art team, and my team kind of hunkers down and makes art, and we have some artists in San Francisco, but overall everybody's pretty chill at the studio.
Sweet.
Like people will sit there and visit throughout the day because it's an open office environment. We don't have cubes, and it's pretty nice.
I still work as a web developer, so I have 40 hours typically dedicated to that. So my typical day is I'll wake up at like 6 in the morning, and my day at my other job doesn't start until 10. So I normally work until like 9:50 and then arrive 15 minutes late to my job because I totally care about what I'm doing more on the side than my job as of right now. And I'll get home and I'll try to squeeze in another 4 or 5 hours, and then my Saturdays and Sundays are typically just entirely dedicated to the game. So my typical day would be it could be ranging from anywhere from doing art to programming to responding to some email like from somebody, and it's completely overwhelming sometimes, but it's also exciting because I never know like really what my day might end up being. We plan stuff out, but whenever you're just like kind of shooting from the hip, it becomes chaotic regardless, and yeah, you can never really plan what's going to break, or yeah, it's crazy, I think.
It doesn't matter if you have a plan. We have all sorts of plans.
Yeah.
Producers love it. Like, here's this giant hands-off list of stuff, and here's a plan that goes out here. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
A month from now, that's all irrelevant.
Yeah.
Slowly, we've been teaching them that. Let's plan for the next month.
Yeah.
Beyond that,
It's good
We
to have
try-
like a broad idea
Yeah,
of
yeah.
what you're doing,
Yeah.
but then also be aware that that needs to stay flexible.
No, they literally used to make us break stuff down into, I think, 2-hour increments
Oh.
on tasks. And I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's how my current job is. Like, they're like, give me a time estimate on this, and it's like, I don't know, 15 minutes, and they want you to put that down, and I'm just like,
Sign a contract with blood,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
15 minutes.
Like, even like, here's the task, and then there's another task for bug fixes, and they want you to estimate it.
Yeah.
Like, how do I estimate a bug fixing
Yeah.
on a task that's not done yet?
yeah,
Yeah.
you overestimate.
When you don't know what the bug, like the source of the bug.
Yeah.
The bug doesn't exist yet because I haven't written the system. How can I estimate this?
So
A good rule for that is what, at least for me, is like take what you think it'll be and then times it by 1.6 is what I've
Oh no,
been
2.
doing. 2?
Times 2.
Right.
At least 2.
7. 7.
Seven.
Yeah.
7's a good
Do
number.
the,
I'll
do the
say.
Scotty thing, you know, where you're like overcompensating for it, and then when you deliver earlier, perhaps like, yeah, look how good I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
under promise, over deliver. That's
Yeah,
what we always
exactly.
we have 2 employees, and like they started by over promising, not under delivering, but like over promising for sure. And we're just like, guys, we'll feel so much better if you under promise. I promise you that. It's totally like it's a psychological thing by far, and it also makes you feel better because if you say, like I'm gonna get X amount of done, even though I know that I can do X amount of done, and you actually do like X plus X, you're gonna feel like like a superhero. Like you're gonna feel so good about the fact that you got so much done in so little
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys think are the advantages of working in the kinds of environments that you do? Like, from spending your entire week focusing on, a job, a real job, as
Yeah,
my
yeah.
family would say, and then doing, the side stuff, or, from spending the entire day in meetings and organizational stuff. Like, what are the advantages of that?
I mean, at least, we're backed still by like money, like we're not out of pocket yet or
Yeah.
whatever. So that's a definite advantage. It's great. I have complete freedom to do whatever really, and so does the other developer. We try to sync up and make sure we don't get too crazy with stuff, but it's nice to know that like if I wake up one day and I want to help out with programming and do that, that's awesome. And if I get bored with doing that, I just can like switch over to doing 3D modeling or whatever. Now clearly I'm not. The other guy is like way better. He's the brain, and so there's stuff I'll write and he's just like, shit, I gotta write this, and I'm just like, he'll fix it or whatever. But it's nice to have that balance and not get completely worn out.
And just to riff on that a little bit, I think that agency is super valuable and enjoyable about being in Indy. It's like you are the one deciding what's important
Yes.
on any given day.
Yeah.
But I also think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. Like when I was at the slightly larger studio, it was like 30 people. I would get a task, and then I could sort of just disappear for a while. Like, hey, go figure out how to make this one system of the game fun, or like figure out how to implement this architecture. And I could sort of more or less, disappear from the rest of the project and the rest of the team at implementing that. And maybe later down the road decide, well, actually we cut that. And that would be really frustrating because, I had invested a week, 2 weeks, a month on this thing, and then somebody arbitrarily somewhere had said, well, actually that's not important.
Yeah.
But being indie, I think when I first went indie, I reveled in that, now I get to do whatever I do and feel like it's going to be important. But I think the double-edged sword component is that you have to make sure that you don't fall back into those old habits of, I just really want to work on this thing because it's going to be fun. You have to ask yourself, is this actually valuable to the product that I'm making? Because ultimately, I'd like to make money off this thing.
Yeah, definitely. It helps you keep track of big picture,
Yes.
for sure. Like you don't have that communication breakdown if you're just talking to one other person,
Yeah.
unless you're not talking to that other person. Then
That's
crazy. But yeah, no, I totally get that for sure.
Heather, how about you?
Well, I don't have the freedom to do whatever I like. Specifically, I do enjoy the security these days of working for a larger company. Like when my daughter needs braces, which just happened recently, it's like, yeah, I have insurance, I have benefits, everything's okay. Whereas, I was freelance before, I was working on tiny games that had zero funding, it was a lot of pocket stuff. And that's a whole different story. So I do enjoy the security of the corporation at this point in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big benefit. I think the other one for us is just the scale of what we can do as 200 people can do a lot more complicated things than 2 people can
Like
do.
Saints Row, for example.
Right, Saints Row. It's kind of a complicated game.
We're pretty close, I would say.
Yeah.
All things go boom, Saints Row.
Yeah.
So it's just that the problems that we can work on, the games that we can tackle is just any different class than you could do as an independent. So, and it also, like on Red Faction stuff, all I did was destruction. And so I could focus all my attention on that. I didn't have to go and fight 18 different fires and wear a ton of different hats. I could do that.
Yeah, focus.
Pour myself into that and just really get involved in it. And I love doing that. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, just to see at the end of the day, you go to the store, see somebody play your game, whatever. Like, I was part of this, and now there's a couple million people that are playing this game and having fun with it.
Yeah, that's a
It's
big
really
deal.
fun.
Yeah. I would say that being able to specialize like that is both a benefit and potentially a bad thing, because depending upon the studio culture, sometimes you can wind up, oh, well, you wrote the code, so you own that entire thing, and oh, now we have this new project that's using that, and guess what? You wrote the code before, so now you own this, and next thing you know, 5 years down the line, you've just kind of been pigeonholed into this role.
Yeah.
A lot of that kind of depends on studio culture. I haven't really seen it that much at Volition, but especially when you're talking about really large publishers that just have thousands of people like Ubisoft and EA, it's just kind of like, yeah, we hired you to do this thing, so you're going to do this thing because you're awesome at it. That's great. Like, keep doing your job. You're really good.
And you're like clawing at the wall.
Yeah,
and
just
you're
like,
it puts the lotion in the basket.
Yes.
You just can't get out.
Yeah.
One of our environmental artists was at Volition, went to Ubisoft for a while and came back, and he gave a presentation on how they do things. And he said, one guy would literally be, I am making textures for buckets. I'm not making buckets. I'm making textures for buckets. I am given a sheet that have reference images of real bucket and the model of the bucket that somebody made from that reference, and I make the texture. And I'm done. Okay, here's another bucket. Make that. I was like, I would shoot myself in the face. That is ridiculous. Like in the strictest way, yeah. But at Volition, we have a programmer who jumped to design. We have a tech artist who became a programmer. We have, I don't know how many QA guys that have become production and designers, production, different roles. Like, you can flow around between disciplines, you can flow in the discipline. Like, if you want to, you are hired as a tools guy, but I really want to do rendering, we have a rendering spot, okay, well, slide you over.
Yeah.
We try to not pigeonhole people, and even our one guy who knows physics, like he's been doing it for years and years, he decided, I'm tired of physics. I'm like, okay.
Cool.
Let's find somewhere else that you're happy and find somebody to slot in there.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage to just an open communication kind of company where you can feel comfortable going to your manager and saying, listen, I want to do something else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about keeping people happy. If they're not happy, they're going to go somewhere else, and so you're going to have to fill that hole anyway. You might as well try to help them out.
I will say, I would love, as much as I like doing a lot of different components, I would love to have somebody that just does like unwraps, because it's like my least favorite part of the entire process. So like, it's great like that I can bounce around, but there are some things that just like I halt progress on because like I don't want to unwrap this model right now.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
Interns are great for stuff.
Yeah, just unwrap these buckets all day, please.
So what are the advantages here?
I mean, I think it's what I spoke on briefly about before. You know, we're ultimately in charge of deciding what's important. I think that's really important to Trinket Studios' culture, because we went through a period at Wild Load where there was a year and a half or 2 years, and we probably had started 15 different prototypes, and everyone would get shut down. There were some that lasted like a week, and then suddenly we'd get an email from like several layers up the administrative chain, and you know, they'd say, well, actually, we're not doing a free-to-play mobile anymore. Now we're doing a like couch play co-op game that's side-scrolling. Like,
It's just a bit of a pivot.
yeah, just a little bit. So
Just recompile the DLLs and make it, right?
It's like 5
yeah,
minutes.
just put some more code, move it around, and can't just move the camera, right?
Just pull in a couch.
Yeah. So really, just feeling like I'm the agent of my own destiny is like the best part about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, heavy, but also valuable.
Yeah. So I would say it's the same for us at Happy Badger Studio. It's the flexibility. There's 5 of us. 3 of us are partners and 2 are employees. And we all do so much. And so like I've been able to be lead animator, lead artist, lead developer, because we've done such a wide array of projects, we've all been able to explore pretty much every aspect of game development, which has been really exciting for all of us because that means, you know, throughout the process, we've been able to learn what we excel at and what we enjoy the most. And so we've all kind of fallen into our comfortable roles because of that. But also because we've been able to give ourselves the experience and everything else, that means we can all help each other out. You know, if somebody's having a programming issue, we're not all necessarily like C# experts, but we can figure out the methodologies to be able to come up with solutions together. And same with, you know, like aesthetics, like since we've all been able to have a hand in art at some point or another, you know, we can all kind of give that input and really feel like we have a really collaborative, tight-knit environment, which is really, really cool.
I find it hard to, I mean, what does your business card say that you are?
I am creator and destroyer of worlds.
Yeah. That's I never know how to like, just, what am I at this company?
We actually announced Smugglecraft on the Sony blog, and they were like, "What's your job title?" And I was like, "Well," and so I told them, like, typically, like at GDC, my badge says Creator and Destroyer of Worlds, and he was like, "I'm gonna try to get that approved with corporate," and they did. So, like on the Sony blog, that's my title. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
One of the things at our studio is everybody's title on the little card is actually game designer.
That's cool.
Whereas, like, it's not everybody's title on paper, but our head guy, his big thing is that everybody has the ability to contribute in some way to the game. So by having that title on everybody's card, that just kind of embodies that sort of culture. Like everybody's feedback is important to the final thing.
Yeah,
so.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. So we touched on it a bit throughout the advantages talk, but I want to dive a little deeper because everybody knows that it's cool to make video games, right? So what are the disadvantages of your particular environment? And what are the lessons that you learned the hard way that like people coming in might not necessarily have any concept of yet? And like that you would just be like, oh my God, you just have to be aware that this horrible thing can and will probably happen. I would say from an indie standpoint, like cash flow is really, really difficult. And we did not have any concept of what it takes to actually make money on games. And so that's why we still, after 4 or 5 years, still have to focus so much on client work because it's really, really difficult to make money. And it's hard and it's very exhausting. You do wind up having to spend a lot of time on project management and on hustling to find the next project. Fortunately, we've been able to transition to actually making games for clients, which has been a huge, you know, like boon to our confidence, instead of just like websites for like random, boring things. But yeah, so like, what are some of the things that you guys have kind of learned?
In lieu of talking more about being your own agent, I would say there's a lot more work involved in dealing with legal matters and financial matters than you realize. And so there are 2 programmers on our team, but Tom, the president of our company, like he probably expends maybe half of his energy on social media and financial matters and legal matters. And so, you know, that doesn't sound like it would come up that often, but when there's only 3 of you and you're like trying to launch a game and make money off the game and live off the game, it suddenly becomes this, you know, it's a context switch. You know, he comes in the morning, he wants to start working on a game, but actually the first thing he has to do is reply to a bunch of emails, do a bunch of business, you know, maybe do something legal with Apple or Google Play, and it's just, that's taxing. So I think the core of it is that if you're gonna go independent and you wanna live off of that business, you have to anticipate that it's not just gonna be like, oh, we're gonna make some games, and then somehow they'll exist and people will give us money. Like, there's a lot of bridge work to be done getting to that point where that bridge is stable.
There is a lot of overhead, and taxes blow.
Yes, it is.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Self-employment tax.
Yeah.
I would say probably patience. Thankfully I came from a background in tech support, which if you've never done it, it's very easy to come up with anger issues after you do it for 2 years.
Same with retail.
Same with retail, yes. When you have somebody you don't know blaming you for all their problems and their poor decisions, that's nope, I'm done. So when you're talking about a studio of 200 people, or when you're talking about bigger studios in UB and EA, you have to deal with a lot of people, and we share a passion for creating games, but some of us just absolutely hate Doctor Who. Some of us love Doctor Who. When you get these personalities together, they don't always mesh very well. We have the end goal in mind. We all want to create something awesome, but the road to that can wind up with very different opinions on what we should do about this little thing, whether this light should be red or just slightly orange. And then you discuss that for a week. And it can be taxing, and especially when you start talking about having to go more than 40 hours a week, everybody starts getting a little bit less patient with each other, everybody starts getting a little bit more short, and being able to recognize those situations and try to diffuse them ahead of time is incredibly valuable.
I'd say, kind of along with that, when I transitioned into my current role from being physics guy, as physics guy, I just go off and leave me alone, I'm doing my physics thing. But now, I have learned very, very quickly that communication is way more important and impactful in the game. So me being at my desk is probably a bad thing. I should just go wander around the hallways and run into people and have conversations and know, what are you working on? Do you have any problems? Is there anything that's holding you up? And kind of just spot fixing little things like that has a much larger impact on making progress in the game. Just being involved in a conversation between an artist and a designer about some problem that they're having, and I was like, well, you know, if we just change this one little thing, that hour-long process that takes you to get something in the game goes to a minute. And they're like, oh, okay, I thought that would be hard, so I didn't want to ask for it. Right? So just being available and being involved in that stuff can be huge.
Yeah, we've discovered having a second set of eyes on anything that somebody's working on is just incredibly valuable. And pair programming, if you guys haven't heard about the method of pair programming, where basically one person's actually typing and another person's looking over their shoulder, and it's just like, you know, you could probably do it like this. It sounds really micromanagey, and sometimes it feels really micromanagey, but it can be super helpful and can really benefit the code and just like the overall quality of the project a lot.
Yeah, like code reviews and things like that.
Yeah.
Really good stuff.
Teach people how to spell.
Oh yes, the struggle. I'd say one of the key disadvantages, I mean, we have this big advantage of being a really big company and well, being part of a really big company and having access to like we get crazy awesome licenses to work with. Like, yeah, we just made a Sharknado game, that was cool. Major downside, well, we don't exactly control everything that we put out, so we also made a Real Housewives of Atlanta game. Yeah, so I mean, you know, the whole, you know, you don't necessarily get to plot your own course thing.
Yeah.
Sure. And then I definitely hear you on the communication thing, because we have people all over the place. It's really important. It's not like everybody's in the same room these days. It started out everybody was pretty much in the same room, aside from the folks in Michigan. But now it's very important to make sure everything's documented thoroughly and everybody's on the same page. And that's definitely a challenge with being bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, to just kind of dovetail off the legal and the paperwork and all that fun stuff. Yeah, we're currently in talks with console providers right now, and we just recently announced for Microsoft, and it's paperwork on paperwork on paperwork, and just constantly filling out these things or responding to emails. So sometimes I'll wake up and just like gung ho to work on this one thing, and it's just like, okay, I got to do all this first, you know, because they've been knocking at the door for a while. Also, I'm effectively, I mean, I feel like I'm always in crunch time because I'm working 2 jobs, and that can lead to very unhealthy habits. I mean, already it's leading to unhealthy habits. When I showed up at PopCon, we had to send out a video to Microsoft, and I was up till 4 in the morning, and then I got up at 7:30, and then came here and did this all day yesterday, and then worked till 2, and now I got up again early. So
Well, you're surprisingly coherent, so congratulations.
Good job.
that's what keeps you going. I'm like jittering like right now, you know? But yeah, so like it certainly leads to very unhealthy habits, and it's not good. But it's really hard to not want to do that whenever you just are super passionate about something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then sometimes, like with my other job, like, you know, it extends past 40 hours a week. I mean, we do client work that's deadline driven, so sometimes something blows up and you have to work on it until like 8 at night or 12 or whatever, and then you want to get back on working on what you really want to work on. So, yeah,
Cool.
certainly.
Well, we have about 10 minutes. Do we want to open it up to questions for a bit? Does anybody have questions? We can take a couple. Yeah.
My question is for our AAA folks. Since I think most of you got into that side of the industry a little while ago, coming out as a graduate now, what would your advice be to those of us trying to get into AAA who may have years of Indy experience, but looking at all of the openings we have for AAA, often require prior AAA experience?
I would say a lot of them say they require AAA experience, but one of the things I found in the industry is a lot more the decision is based on what you can show you can do and your personality. Are you going to be a wrench in the cogs of their system because your personality just doesn't mesh well with anybody else? And are you just going to be able to do the job? A lot of places will say, oh, there's a senior level designer position, or there's a senior environment art position. But if there's a candidate that has a lot of promise, a lot of them won't immediately say, oh, this person doesn't have 5 years of industry experience, so just throw it in the trash. If the portfolio kind of can speak for itself, then they'll say, oh, let's talk to them. Oh, well, the phone interview went great. Let's pull them on site. Let's see what the personality is and see if there's that potential that they could become a senior at the studio.
Absolutely. I do a lot of the hiring interview stuff for the programming, and yeah, they'll put kind of the wish list of here's what we want, even requirements. But honestly, that's a lot to just weed out people who are like, I think making video games would be great, and they have an entry-level job. That's totally me. No. It says senior to make people think, oh, okay, I'm not good enough. So the people that are really good, even if they don't have the experience, they still apply. And yeah, it's a lot of, does it come across, please, for the love of God, do a good cover letter.
And spell check.
And spell check. Don't do a form letter and change the company name to my company name. Like, that will get me to throw it in the trash. Or if you don't provide one at all, like, okay, you don't want to invest 5 minutes understanding what this company is and why you want to work here, you're not worth me looking at your stuff. So that is step one. Step two is have a good, fairly tight portfolio. People looking at resumes don't have a lot of time to go and download your game and make it run. Like, give me a YouTube video that I can go and watch. Like, okay, here's this thing, and then explain this is what I did on the project. Be able to really talk through both what went well and what didn't go well and how you resolved it, because that's most of what games are, is this thing didn't go well, okay, let's switch and do that. But yeah, just clearly demonstrating both your ability in whatever your field is, and then just your general passion for making games.
Always remember, your portfolio is only as good as your worst piece.
Right, that's why I say keep it tight.
That all the time. Even if your portfolio is only 3 pieces, that's better than having 10 pieces and only 3 of them are good.
And you're going to need stuff in there above and beyond just like what you did for classwork. A lot of people mill through their degrees and it's just like, this is what I did. But work on stuff like outside of class. Form groups with other students. Make games on the side.
Game jams.
Yeah, game jams.
Those are a lot of fun.
Stuff like contests and festivals give you a hard date to shoot for. Like I formed teams for IGF student competition a couple years, and we always had like something cool to show afterwards, even though we never like even got nominated. It was still really good, and the more you have in there, you just have to be able to demonstrate, like they were saying, that you have the skills and that you can do what's on the little bullet list.
Having something that's like if you have a game on your portfolio, having a completed game that is like one coherent thing instead of 5 different little tech demos, I'd say is better, because it shows you can go start to finish and you get more of the full experience of making a game. And I don't know, I've only worked at Volition, so I don't know what the practices are elsewhere, but we very much have no problem hiring in junior people and training them up to be senior eventually, because we're trying to hire people for a long term. We're not just, let me spot hire for this thing and then we're going to kick people out. We want to get people in who we think fit culturally and have the technical skill to grow. Like, even if people meet the current bar, if I don't think that you're going to be able to grow and become one of the senior principal people, we'll pass. Like, I want people that can grow.
Yeah, I'm not from a AAA studio, but for the web agency that I do work for, I conduct a lot of the interviews, and I can tell you that we hired one guy who didn't even have a college degree for an architect position on our main framework, strictly off of his personality and his skill set. So like what these guys are saying with the requirements, I wouldn't focus too much on that. Like if you're a badass, we're gonna hire you, and if you're not an axe murderer, really. So.
I would echo that for our studio. We have 2 full-time employees, and neither of them have college degrees. One of them just graduated from high school, but they showed that they could work on their own, and that's super important. Specifically from an Indy standpoint, they're both, like, the guy who just graduated from high school has been doing Unity longer than anybody in our studio has. He's been doing it since he was 13 years old. And so, like, the fact that he's been able to do that and, like, show he can complete games as a teenager, you know, like, that shows more to us and, like, more about your work ethic and your ability to be self-directed than anything else. It's hugely important.
Yeah, it kind of upsets me because I spent a lot of money going to college.
Sorry.
I'm still in debt, and people are like, yeah, there's a balance.
Different paths for everybody.
Yeah, there's
right?
different paths
Like
for everybody. Yeah.
some people are more like self-learning.
I could have totally have gone without college.
Yeah, I
I
think it's
fine with that.
common for people to
I
get
don't know.
jobs right out of high school. I
Yeah,
think it was just like,
yeah.
I mean, we met both of these guys through networking. We met one of them at an anime convention that we were showcasing at, and we met the 19-year-old at, like, through Twitter and through local St. Louis game dev events. So it's just a matter of, like, getting out there and meeting people and finding out what they need and telling them what you can do.
Yeah, definitely get out there and get involved. There's probably a community in your area where you can go and meet other developers. And if you're volunteering, especially for things, then you're going to get to know the people who are actually making things happen and get introduced to people. And it's really super helpful. A lot of people I know have kind of gotten in that way by volunteering and just getting involved.
Yeah, just talk to developers. They're people.
Yeah.
They were in your exact spot at some point in their past.
Is there any Reddit users in here? Yeah, so there is a lot of subreddits that are super helpful. There's Game Devs Classified. There's Game Dev. Like, people are constantly critiquing each other on there. So, I mean, if you're just trying to break out into it a little bit and just don't want to talk face-to-face with people initially, like, you can just throw your stuff up on there and people will tear you apart. I mean, like shit. But it'll make you a better person or a better developer or whatever you're trying to become.
So we're pretty much out of time. I'd like to run down the line, and if you want to let people know what you're working on right now and how they can find you or get in contact with you after the panel.
I'm working on All Things Go Boom. It's a tank party game where you just blow each other up. It's crazy and chaotic. We're at booth 350. We're handing out free shirts for tournaments and stuff, so you should totally come by. There are these guys here. And I have swag on me right now, too, so if anybody wants something afterwards.
Stickers,
stickers and buttons. I learned that from you yesterday, actually. Yeah.
That's smart. That's real smart.
Yeah. Yeah, please visit us. We're really excited to talk to you.
I have no swag.
That's a cough drop. This is mine.
Sorry about that.
Can't have the coffee.
No, that's important.
But you can follow me on Twitter. I'm Heather M. Decker. Like I said, I'm working on Hit It Rich Casino Slots still, which isn't here. We don't have a booth. I'm just wandering around. You might see me, wave at me, say hi. It's fine. Yeah, exactly. You can't miss me usually. So, yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, also don't have a booth. We're just wandering around. Happy to hang out and chat with people. But I'm working on an engine for a game that we may or may not be making right now.
Really do tell. Tell us your secrets.
We may or may not be making a game.
It's not being recorded right now at all.
Please tell me.
We do not own the rights to Red Faction anymore.
Make one that looks like it.
A company in Norway bought Red Faction and then for whatever reason bought the THQ name. Like, why would you want to buy the name of somebody that just went bankrupt?
Wow.
They did. So it just happened.
Contact info. Go.
Yeah, contact info. So I have business cards. If anybody wants one, please feel free to take one. It's got my email address on it. I don't have a phone on my desk, so email is usually the best way since I'm never at my desk anyway. And yeah, other than that was probably
I'm Ben, also business cards. You can tweet at me at TrinketBen. I'm with Trinket Studios. We're at booth 451. We're working on Battleship Brigade. It's basically fantasy Iron Chef, action cooking RPG. And yeah,
I can check it.
please do.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm Carol. You can find me on Twitter at Carol Mertz. I'm with Happy Badger Studio out 346. 346. Look for the people wearing Badger shirts. We've got Smugglecraft, is a quest-based hovercraft racing game. And yeah, if anybody's from the St. Louis area, hit me up. I help run the St. Louis IGDA events out there, so I'm happy to tell you all about the community. Cool. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it.